Well, welcome back again. This is continuation of these slides. I put this in a special topic category because both of these will be hidden in the ordinary slide set. This first one is here because someone in the audience might ask about this. This is a bestseller, really interesting book. This man is received a Nobel laureate in economics, even though he's a psychologist. He's talking about the fact that we think with two completely different systems. I find this also very useful in regular life. When he started this work, he called System 1 intuition, which worried me because I thought, well, the 4D system intuition is a form of information source. But later he worked with a guy named Gary Klein, who's also written books about this, and he changed it to fast thinking, which I like a lot better. And when I thought about it and the way he described it, it fits the 4D system perfectly. It's a process that involves emotional deciding and intuitive information. He contrasts it with what he calls System 2, which is the other side of the 4D system, which is sensed information that's processed logically. And so he talks about the differences, and I love to demonstrate this with people, talk about System 1, and just say 2 plus 2. And what you'll find is it's, I think, utterly impossible not to think of 4. This is the automatic involuntary system which runs all the time. In contrast, on the other side, if I gave you something like 147 times 22, you can't process it with System 1. So, and this is very commonly how this works, you got to make a decision whether you're going to invoke System 2 and do the work, and System 2 is conscious and lazy and orderly. If you don't invoke System 2, there is no answer at all. Again, fascinating. System 1 comes from beliefs from past trusted others. Therefore, you can't argue about System 1. So if I look at the U.S. political situation today, I see a lot of people operating on System 1 about things like, the Earth is 6,000 years old, or climate change isn't real. And why doesn't scientific debate work? Because they're not in System 2. And over here on System 2, which is about process, reasoning, and evidence, you can actually do you can debate with people, you can make progress, you can argue. That little blip, because I just put a comma in there. System 1, because it's running all the time, has no physiological manifestation. System 2, when you evoke it and put instruments on people, it's very interesting. All kinds of things happen. Blood pressure goes up, you become tense, your pupils dilate. So physiologically, you can, with some instruments and some observations, you can tell where people are. System 1 actually generates amazingly complex patterns. It is not a simple system at all, but it runs and does really interesting things. And System 2, of course, is orderly and analyzes logically. System 1, he calls it the storyteller. It jumps on scant evidence, and it's absolutely correct. He calls System 2 the editor, slow, lazy, and thorough. System 1 is trust my gut, and I have no use whatever for U.S. President George W. Bush, but he actually bragged about trusting his gut, and his System 1 took us into war in Iraq and all kinds of crazy things. And System 2 is trusting my capacity to reason. System 1, it's rigid, and I talked about this before, change is difficult, maybe impossible. In System 2, and this is my own experience also, I love to change if someone can reason with me through something, get a new idea. A really good, for me, way to watch the two systems is, I'm sure you've had the experience where you're driving a car on an easy road, and you go down the road and you're not even aware that you've been driving. And so that's how System 1 works. System 2, you have to invoke to do something more complex. So after I read this book, I'm riding down the road and I'm driving along and I'm listening to a very complicated discussion on public radio. And I came to a place where the traffic was complicated. I had to look around and move the car over into the merging traffic. And I noticed that the radio went away, and for about that 20 seconds, the radio just vanished. So System 2 came in, and instead of System 2, so what I had is System 1 driving the car, System 2 listening to the radio. When I had to invoke System 2 to drive the car, it dropped the radio, went over, drove the car, and so forth. Really interesting stuff. Also, people occasionally ask me about Myers-Briggs because it looks a little bit like the 4D system. And they asked me, did I get the 4D system from Myers-Briggs? The answer is no. We both got it from the same source document. I've talked about this earlier, Jung's book, Psychological Types. They were interested in placing women in the World War II workforce. So another giant difference is they're interested in how people are functioning at the moment. And the 4D system is much more interested in Jung's original work, which was what's our innate preference. Their system has been, it's the most popular characterization in the world because the test is so easy to build, just same as the work we'll be doing in a little bit. So they have 16 types, which I think is too many, too complicated. By the way, I benefit enormously from the research that they stimulated, but I don't like the system at all. The first thing is extroversion, and many people don't understand what this is about. I hear sort of simple characterizations of this, but I think when you get to the core, extroverts are externally focused and introverts are internally focused, and even they say that there's a continuum here. This is unlike the 4D system where I claim there is no continuum. If you're right-handed or left-handed, it is a binary idea. And another reason I don't like this is that I don't see any easy correlation to performance or leadership effectiveness. In fact, the bulk of the research that I've read about business leaders is that the introverts are actually more effective, even though the extroverts are more popular. So that's their first term in their system, E and I think better to ignore it. It's a confusing factor. In terms of the next thing, the information, because they picked it up from, by the way, the coordinate system's not theirs. This is me putting it on the coordinate system. The N is for intuitive information, S is for sense. That matches back to Jung's work and also to the 4D system. And then they use F for what I call emotional and T for what I call logical. The synonyms, it's the same. And then finally, they have this P and J. And the P means that your primary axis is perceiving, and I've shown that here in the image as the information axis. And I would call a person who's overdone perceiver ready, aim, aim, aim. Excuse me. And also the last term is the judging axis, means you're primarily a decider. And I would call that person ready, fire, aim. So the 4D system characterizations should never change. And I find many people in multiple workshops say, yep, that's who I am innately. We're interested in that. They're interested in how you're functioning today, which is a very different problem. And so these things change a lot. The most stable thing in Myers-Briggs is the E and the I. It changes relatively little. The N and the S change more often. The F and the T change very often also. And the P and the J, I think, change like 40% of the time as you measure it. In fact, the Myers-Briggs characterization, gets this completely wrong for me. I'm overwhelmingly an intuitor. I understand this about myself, and every time I take the test, it says I'm a J. So there it is. It's I don't like the system. It's too complicated. It's not versatile enough. But the research that's come out of it is something that I admire greatly, and I'm glad they did it. That completes this special topic. Again, it's a special topic because I hide these slides unless somebody asks me about it. And now we'll move on to the next segment, which is about surfacing the unpleasant realities. Thank you for listening, and there we go. Thank you very much. See you soon. Bye-bye.